If you sell to a 20-person company, the same way you sell to a 2,000-person company, you will lose. Not because your service is weak, it's because client size changes everything. In this video, I'll break down 7 critical shifts so you can sell down market and up market with clarity instead of fumbling deals that should have closed. My name is Faris Al-Halu. I started my entrepreneurial journey after getting laid off with 0 experience in sales. Over time, I've generated more than $70 million in revenue, built an 8-figure consulting firm that I sold to global media giant dentsu. But before we get into the shifts, there's one assumption that is quietly sabotaging you. Just because you worked in corporate or understand it or interacted with it, it doesn't mean you can sell to it. I'll give you an example from my martial arts experience. Selling to an SMB, small and medium-sized businesses, is like a pretty short one-on-one sparring session. Selling to enterprise is like competing at a tournament with judges, rules, paperwork, and multiple rounds. Same basic actions, very different arenas. With this in mind, let's get into the first shift. Shift number 1, sales cycle, speed versus stamina. So what actually changes first when you move up market? The timeline. You pitch an SMB owner on Monday. By next Thursday or the week after, they say yes or no. Now compare that to this. You present to a director at an enterprise. They say, "This looks great, let's proceed." And then silence. Enterprise buyers operate on quarterly budgets and internal alignment. Your proposal might be perfect, but it's waiting on budget approval, internal review, and cross-department alignment. Silence stretches from days to weeks to months. By month 3, you assume you've been ghosted and you mentally move on. But enterprise isn't emotional speed, it is organizational movement. A pro tip from 20 plus years in the field and over 2,000 proposals, and also from various industry reports. SMB deals often close in 2 to 8 weeks. Enterprise B2B sales cycles typically run 3 to 9 months. And if you're selling complex solutions to very large companies or government agencies, which I've done in a couple of my ventures here and abroad, you could be looking at 12 months or more. Now, it pays off over time, but during the process, it can test your patience, your cash flow, and your confidence. So hang in there. Generally, SMB deals move on urgency and emotion, but enterprise deals move on budget cycles and alignment. So if you don't build pipeline stamina, you'll quit right too soon. Shift number 2, decision makers. One owner versus buying committee. In small business, you're usually speaking to the person who owns the outcome. But in enterprise, the person nodding at you might not be the person who can sign. You win over a marketing manager, they love it, and they say, "I'm excited, let's do this." You think the deal is done. Meanwhile, procurement hasn't seen your proposal, legal hasn't reviewed your terms, finance hasn't justified the spend this quarter. You're only talking to one node in that system. Research from Gartner shows that the average B2B buying group involves 6 to 10 stakeholders. That champion you won over, they have to resell you internally. If you don't arm them with clear ROI logic, executive level summaries, and budget justification language, you leave them exposed. Now here's the fixed version. Instead of you saying, "Let me know what you think about the offer or about the proposal," you say, "Who else needs to review this before it's approved? What does procurement require?" Things like insurance and forms. And then, is there a budget owner we should loop in early? Now you're mapping the buying committee. If your main point of contact isn't giving you visibility into who's involved, you don't wait. You do your own stakeholder mapping. Use LinkedIn, use Google, use ChatGPT to analyze roles and infer influence, and leverage the AI built into modern CRMs. Tools like HubSpot's Breeze Intelligence can automatically enrich records with company data, revenue, size, tech stack, location, and even surface buying signals and engagement patterns. That means you're not just identifying stakeholders, you're understanding what matters to them. A pro tip here: I am not suggesting you bypass your main point of contact and reach out to other stakeholders directly. That is rarely advisable. People don't like to be circumvented. Here's one way I would address it with my main point of contact. I would say, in my experience, people in these roles, and then you list the roles that you researched, like management, finance, operations, and legal, typically review proposals. I thought to check with you if folks in these roles here need to be looped in. The main thing is to remember that small businesses have decision makers, enterprises have decision systems. And if you don't map the full committee, address what they care about and what risks they're evaluating, you are pitching half a deal. Shift number 3, risk tolerance. Trust versus institutional protection. When you sell to SMBs, trust can close the deal. But in corporate environments, trust is just step 1. What happens after they say they like you? This looks great. We trust you. You expect a contract. Instead, you get onboarding forms, security reviews, and compliance questionnaires. And you wonder if you messed something up. You didn't. They are protecting their job and their reputation. So when bureaucracy shows up, expect it and prepare for it. Have insurance certificates ready, security forms documented, and vendor onboarding responses templated. That is not red tape, that is the cost of entry. Keep in mind that when you're pitching corporate, the risk isn't personal, it is institutional. If you like to download my SMB versus Enterprise Shift framework, I have the link in the description. Before we move on to the next shift, a pro tip here. When I talk about SMB on one side and Enterprise on the other, understand this is a continuum. It's not binary. Speaking to a solo insurance practice owner is different from speaking to a VP at a 100% regional insurance carrier, and that's very different from presenting to a director at a national insurance carrier. Different complexity, risk tolerance, and timelines. Adjust your language, your depth, and your expectations accordingly. Shift number 4, emotional experience. Directness versus invisibility. This is the part of enterprise deals that messes with your head more than the endless additional requests. When you sell to SMBs, you're more likely to get a clear no or yes early in the sales process. But in enterprise, the meeting goes well. They say they're excited. Then nothing. Emails slow down. Internal conversations happen without you, and then weeks pass with no visible movement. And your brain starts writing stories. Those whispers that you have to control. Maybe I'm not senior enough. Maybe they changed their mind. Maybe I blew it. No, the silence is structural. It's not performance related. Committees meet monthly and approvals move in layers. You're not being rejected. You're inside that decision system. Your discipline here isn't emotional, it's strategic follow-up, professional check-ins, and value-based nudges. Don't send just checking in any updates. No, every follow-up should add something useful, a relevant case study, an industry report, a competitive insight, or a refined projection tied to their goals. Shift number 5, pricing dynamics. Constrained budget versus justified budget. You assume corporate buyers will negotiate harder, so you pre-discount to be safe. But what if That's the exact wrong move. You quote $25,000. Then you say, but we can probably do it for 15 before the client even made a request. SMBs negotiate from scarcity and emotion. Enterprise buyers, they're not thinking, can I afford this? They're thinking, can I defend this internally? A completely different mindset. When you discount too early, your price becomes harder to defend internally. Now it looks smaller, and smaller often signals lower impact. Here's the fix. Instead of shrinking the number, expand the justification. Clarify scope, tie outcomes to revenue or savings, and anchor against the cost of inaction. The longer the organization delays signing the contract and implementing your solution, the more money it wastes, the more revenue it fails to capture, and the longer client or employee dissatisfaction persists. Don't discount too early or too steeply. It will not make you look competitive. Shift number 6. Operational expectations, flexibility versus governance. Winning the deal is one thing. Delivering your solution inside a corporate structure is another. And this is where many consultants quietly get exposed. You might be thinking, what does delivery have to do with sales and pitching we're talking about in this video? Hear me out. With an SMB client, you send a quick email update and they reply, sounds good. With enterprise, they expect a whole lot more. Reporting cadence, documented milestones, structured updates across multiple teams. If your delivery lives in your head, you'll feel reactive. If it lives in a documented process, you'll feel authoritative. In your sales process, I want you to signal how you would operate after the deal is signed. Instead of ad hoc updates, you send weekly updates, monthly executive summaries, defined KPI dashboards, or whatever you think matters to your clients. If you operate with reporting cadence and structure, enterprise buyers are more likely to do business with you. Shift number 7, cash flow. Upfront versus net 60 and net 90. Here's the operational reality, cash flow. You finally land the big client, but the money doesn't move the way you're used to. SMB clients send 50% upfront. And believe me, there's nothing like getting that money upfront. Cash is king. I still cherish the moment I received my very first 50% down payment, a whopping check for $700 on a $1,400 website for Athena Grill, my first client. Money in hand before starting work is sweet, but enterprise clients will say, we'll issue a purchase order. Then vendor onboarding delays the start. Payment terms are net 60. That means they'll pay you in 60 days. Sometimes net 90. I had one shameless Fortune 500 company demand net 120. Worse, they wanted to pay us 120 days from completing the work, not from signing the contract. But of course I said yes. I wanted that logo badly, not to mention the large sum of money from that contract. Enterprise strategy requires cash reserves and ideally milestone-based billing where possible. Enterprise contracts are fantastic for your long-term growth. You just need to plan your cash flow shorter term. A pro tip here: never rely on a single enterprise contract. Ideally, you should have multiple enterprise conversations progressing at the same time. That requires a steady lead flow, something you'll build intentionally over time, because one delayed signature can disrupt your cash flow, but multiple active deals smooth it out. You don't need a different service to go up market. You need a different stance. Same skill, different arena, different rules, different timing. But even if you understand these 7 shifts, most consultants still weaken their position at the proposal stage without even realizing it. So in this next video, I'm going to show you exactly how to write proposals that win for both SMB and enterprise so you can strengthen your positioning and increase your close rate.